If anyone can deserve to be called she, her, or he, him, whereas they, them is really just to describe any people in general, then you can be specific about yours. Hello. That's a terrible way to start. Oh no. I need water. Hey friends, welcome back. I should welcome myself back because you all have been on YouTube and I've not. Anyway, today I thought we'd do a special LGBTQ 101 video. Yay! Alright, I don't know if you remember the last one, but in that one we talked about a lot of umbrellas. You should watch that. I don't think I will be using all those terms as much because today we're talking about something entirely different. They've been silent for like 3 hours. We're talking about something entirely different today because it has nothing to do with sexuality. And that is, dun dun dun, they them pronouns. They them pronouns. I guess you could just say they pronouns, but I've never heard anyone say that, so they them pronouns. I want to give you a few tips, but first I will explain to you what these are in case you don't know, because it's a 101 for a reason, okay? We're going back to basics. So, I'm not going to give you a full history on they them pronouns, but just know we used to use them up until like, I forget, was it the 50s and 60s? Because I just couldn't remember if it was the 50s or 60s, but we used to use them until we started changing a lot of things around. Everything kind of became centered around the pronoun he, him. I wonder why. But for a long time, English did just use they, them, and it was rare to specify she or he. And they, them is a really great example of a gender-neutral pronoun. A lot of other languages have this, where it's like not really tied to a gender. It's just kind of the term you use when you're talking about a person, like a pronoun for a person. And that's why pronouns are important, because they're representative of a person as a whole. Other than like someone's first name, the first thing you learn about them is their pronouns. So they're really heckin' important. I'm sorry, I won't do that. Getting someone's pronouns correct is a sign of respect for other people because of this. So like, let's say your friend Nancy, I've been watching too much Stranger Things. Your friend Nancy uses she, her pronouns, and you slip up and use he, him. She's gonna be heckin' offended. It's no different with they, them pronouns, because some people feel like they don't relate to either pronouns and they prefer to use they, them pronouns. And when I say prefer, it's not like a preference of like, oh, just maybe call me this, you know? It's more of like, these are my pronouns. So when I say pronouns, I just say, oh, my pronouns are, rather than like, I prefer the pronouns, because to me they aren't like a preference, they just are. You know? Okay. Even if you think that's ridiculous, basically it's harmful and upsetting when someone misgenders you. Whether that's my example with Nancy, if you called her like he, then that's offensive. So it goes with all pronouns. And they, them isn't the only gender neutral pronoun, but it's a very common one, so that's what we're going to focus on because this is just a 101 video. If you want me to focus on other ones, then leave that in the comments and I'll add it to my list. Because of this, misgendering someone usually comes off on the outside as intentionally hurtful. So whether or not you think that that's like not a thing or you don't believe in it, even though it's like a part of grammar, some people still say they don't believe in it. But whether or not you believe in it, it doesn't matter, because on the outside it just makes you kind of look like a jerk. And we don't want that. None of us want to feel like we look like a jerk or that we're unintentionally hurting someone and it comes off as intentional. So that's one of my tips. Now that you get the gist about why pronouns are important, let's talk about tips on how to use they, them pronouns. Dun dun dun. Basically, if you wonder why I'm using dramatic sound effects with my mouth. It's because a lot of people see they them pronouns as this big, scary, unknown mystery pronoun. The horror, the pronoun. Okay, it's just a pronoun. That's part of tip number 1. For a lot of people who are very new to this, hold on to your pants or your skirt or your shorts. Or if you're not wearing pants, just hold on to yourself because tip number 1, conspiracy theory proven to be true. You already use they them pronouns. Dun dun dun. Okay. I don't know if I'll use that. I'm so sorry. But it's true, you use them all the time. Let's say I'm talking to my friend. They're talking to me. I just use they them. So if my friend, you don't know what gender they are, I can just say like they, and it just fits right in there. A lot of people think of they as plural, but it's actually pretty common. If you're talking to someone and they say, my cousin's driving over later, and you ask, oh, where are they driving from? It just comes out naturally because cousin is not gendered. It could be someone who uses any pronouns. So we do use them all the time. Another example, I'll just give a few examples just so you can get used to it. Like, just get used to the sound. Sit in the bath of they, them, so it pours out of my mouth faucet. So tip number 1 was surprise, you already use them. Now that we've established that, tip number 2, realize, yes, I'm asking you to realize something is relevant, okay? Realize that they are actually, bear with me, they're actually easy to use, okay? Alright, I promise you, they may seem scary, even though they're just like little words, but they're like, you can do this, okay? I believe in you. The only difference when you're using they, them pronouns is really like you hardly use it. And I personally just use it interchangeably. I've heard of like people who use they, them pronouns also do this differently. So it kind of doesn't matter. But if you are a grammar freak, I understand. I am too. I write novels and comics and all this stuff, okay? This is grammatically correct. The only difference is that, like, when you're talking about someone, you say himself or herself, and a lot of people use themselves because they're used to hearing that for plural pronouns, but you can use themself. Pretty simple, right? It kind of just mushes together anyway, like whoever really hears the difference. The main difference between like when we say themself or themselves is the S. So you can kind of just mush it if you want. If you tell yourself that they're hard to use, they're going to stay hard to use and they'll only get harder. So that brings me to tip number 3. I promise you already know how to use them. So, but in case you're worried, it's better to use them and fail at it than to not use them at all. And this goes with a lot of pronouns because especially if someone changes their pronouns, like from he, him to they, them, or she, her to he, him, then it's going to take some practice because you have to go through the process of changing that person's identity in your mind. This is why pronouns are so important to people and they care about it so much, because it's like a representation of who you are, and if something is used to describe you that doesn't feel right, it might make you feel uncomfortable in a variety of different ways. But especially for trans people, if someone starts using the wrong pronouns too much, it can be kind of dangerous for them in this current climate, because a lot of people aren't very accepting of trans people. So it's in a way like outing that person over and over again. But if they see other people respecting that person and using the correct pronouns and just like not caring, just like going with the flow and using them correctly, then it provides an awesome example for people. It's a good way to be an ally. Very easy way to be an ally. I think a lot of people get tripped up when they mess up someone's pronouns, and this is where this tip also comes in handy for all pronouns, but especially they, them, because I think people trip up on they, them, and then they'll revert back to she, her pronouns or he, him pronouns. But the more that you do that, the less it's gonna, it's basically gonna undo all of the progress you've made in your own brain to think of that person as who they actually are. So when you do mess up, even if you know that it's important, just quickly correct yourself and then move on and just keep using the correct ones. I don't recommend just giving up and reverting into other pronouns because it makes it even harder on your brain, and it makes the other person feel like a lot of this video I've talked about how you might feel if you're learning how to use pronouns, but I haven't talked enough about how other people might feel. While it is dangerous and uncomfortable, some people might literally just feel like they aren't supported, and if you care about someone, it's really important to use their pronouns. A lot of people think about this and they get scared when they mess up, and even if you know it is hurtful to someone, the best way to just kind of apologize is just use it correctly in the moment immediately after. So let's say you're talking about, I'm talking about Nancy, who now uses they, them pronouns, and I say, oh, they went to go get the book. You can just make a noise if you want or something, but I would just say or something that references you said the wrong thing, and then just move on and just keep talking about how they went to go get the book and then they found it and got in their car and drove away instead of just being like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Instead, what you can do is just finish the conversation and then privately tell them later, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I think in the moment it can be more embarrassing for that person because it's brings up that sense of am I not presenting correctly, or do people not actually accept me, type of a thing. Honestly, the way you use them isn't new at all. A lot of people think all of a sudden because it's singular you have to use they, is, but it sounds wrong because it is wrong. It's pretty much the same as plural pronouns, and we use it singularly all the time. So let's say you see someone walking across the street and they're wearing a hood, so you don't know who they are, what gender they are. Did you notice I'm using they, them? That's how you use it. Okay. So it'd be oh, they are jumping, or their cat is jumping, or I want to go on a date with them. There you go. You might think that that is only grammatically correct for plural situations. So if you have a group of people, you would say they. While that's works for plural, yes, it's, I promise you, also singular, and I hope the examples that I used have helped. You do already use them, as I said. I promise you, you use them, you just haven't noticed because we don't usually notice our grammar, and that's why sometimes pronouns can be hard, because it's asking you to pay attention and correct something in our grammar, and I guess people get maybe wary of change, but as long as you're trying, that's what's important. Just keep trying and you will eventually get it perfectly. It won't actually take as long as you think, as long as you push through and don't give up on it and don't revert to other pronouns that aren't necessarily correct. Sorry, my dog. Someone else asked me, so I actually use these pronouns and I have a pronoun pin, but I'm scared to use it. Help. I think that they meant they're scared to use the pin, but whether they meant the pin or the pronouns, I'll tell you. The thing about this is it can be kind of scary to ask someone to use the right pronouns, so I would recommend the very first thing you do is somewhat come to the understanding, at least. You need to kind of have some acceptance of your own pronouns and self, because if you're going into it and not feeling confident about your pronouns, or you're embarrassed about yourself, then it's going to cause more issues because people notice those things, and sometimes people just take it the wrong way and they might not understand. Like, they might think that you're trying to do something other than just get help from them. So I would go to a very trusted person after you already have accepted yourself in a way. Like, yes, these are my pronouns and I'm going to use them because I deserve that, and you do. So if anyone like can deserve to be called she, her, or he, him, whereas they, them is really just to describe any people in general, then you can be specific about yours. Those last came out. Okay, I need some water again. So once you have someone who starts using your pronouns correctly, it'll start to feel really good. But if you don't have that luxury, it can be really hard to keep your confidence up and remind people. It's really hard to like stand up for yourself constantly for something that is so basic that people know it, like as basic as your name. Like, a stranger could find out your name and pronouns. Hopefully you can start to surround yourself with other people who understand how you feel, or people in a nearby LGBT community, whether that's at school or at some sort of center nearby, like a local LGBT center, because those are the people who understand why it's important. By surrounding yourself with more people who accept you for who you are, you'll start to feel more confident. I still think also that a lot of it is coming to terms with that you are allowed to use it and that you're deserving of taking up that space. And a lot of times it does ask you to take up a lot of extra space, and it can be uncomfortable, especially for people who were assigned female at birth, because a lot of people who are assigned female at birth are taught that they are less than and they can't speak up and ask for extra things, or they'll be considered a slew of negative words. So it takes time to unlearn that, and it's okay, like, if you feel frustrated with yourself for not like pushing yourself to stand up for yourself. Like, I understand that. It's hard for me, and I don't even use they, them pronouns. It was hard for me in the beginning, transitioning using he, him, and standing up for myself. But once you have people around you, and if you're able to, like, if you're feeling strong enough in yourself, you can start educating people and say, like, hey, this is important to me. I know you care about me and I care about you, so I need you to help me with this. People tend to respond better if they know you're asking for their help and they know what they can do, rather than just feeling like uncertain, because if you don't know about a subject, you can't ask what you need to learn. So I hope that helps. It's a lot, I'm sorry. I feel like this was a lot for a 101. So if you hung in there, I'm proud of you. You did a good job. Let's do a very quick recap. Alright, you ready? So, they, them. Oh, I missed my finger. Okay, let's try this again. They, them, a gender-neutral pronoun. This means it's not attached to any gender in particular. It's also not new. We used to use it until we started replacing pronouns with he, him, usually. So, let's say you'd have something that was like vague, talking about someone. And a lot of our constitution says this now as well, and I know they changed the Bible to say this a lot, where they'd say a person and his feelings, for example. I don't know. A person and his feelings, rather than like a person and their feelings. That should sound more natural, like their feelings, because everyone is not a man. Shocker. It kind of like we disrupted our language pattern at a time where that was kind of more politically correct. So by us reverting back to they, them pronouns, it is actually going backwards. It's not as progressive as it seems, because it's actually going back in time. So there's that. Even if you don't agree with they, them pronouns, they're grammatically correct, and all it makes you do, like if you use the wrong pronouns from the outside, people might observe it as you're attempting to intentionally harm them, when that's most likely not the case. Now for tips on how to use they, them pronouns. Number 1, surprise, you already use them. Number 2, realize that they're easy to use. If you tell yourself it's hard, it's only going to get harder. And 3, It's better to use them and fail than not use them at all. And that's because it kind of makes your brain just unlearn everything it's learned. And especially if you're dealing with a particular person you care about and you don't want to lose progress on learning to use pronouns. It can be hard work at first, but it's easier than it seems because it just takes practice. It's all about repetition. The more you use it, the more natural it'll feel. Because you do already use it, and that's why it does sound grammatically correct for me to say like, oh, someone just knocked over the trash can, I don't know what they're thinking. Okay, hope you're having a great day. I'm gonna leave. I adore you. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you very soon.